diesel is not the devil. The government today making it stand clear before the Supreme Court in the diesel ban case. Not just that, the centre has also argued before the court that imposing a cess is the executive's domain and the judiciary should not encroach into its territory. Joining us now to discuss this further is Ashmit Kumar, and also with us is R.C. Bhargav, the chairman of Maruti. Ashmit, very quickly, I'm going to come to you to give us a wrap of what transpired in court today and what we can expect.
Well, as you rightly pointed out, the government there drawing the line as far as the exercise of legislative versus judicial function is concerned. The centre had its position very, very clear. They argued that as far as levy of cess is concerned, it's a function of taxation powers, and that those powers rest exclusively with the legislature, that the government, that the courts, in fact, it will not be appropriate for them to come forward and enter this domain as far as levy of cess is concerned. Furthermore, the government also argued that the diesel car is a segment that is already heavily taxed, and there's no further space to add additional cesses or levies as far as diesel cars are concerned. And finally, the government argued seeking a lifting of the ban as well as not a non-imposition of the cess. They finally argued that this is one space that in fact has seen a lot of uncertainty in the past, and that any such move by the courts will in fact inspire a lack of confidence as far as this sector is concerned. Now, riding piggyback on the government's arguments, we understand that even the car makers sought the lifting of the ban. They argued that all the cars coming out are BS4 compliant, that earlier cars are in fact causing more harm, that the ban has done no good in terms of the pollution levels. So that's the sum and substance of the car makers' arguments. What's important here is that the Supreme Court also sought to defend its turf, arguing that it's not appropriate for the government to in fact warn the court of such action to be taken or not to be taken. The courts also said that the government should not be seen siding with sides that are in fact polluting in this case. So on that note, we understand that the Supreme Court has reserved its verdict. So the question mark as of now still remains. Status quo, importantly, continues as far as diesel cars are concerned. Back to you.
Okay, Ashmit, thanks very much for that. Let's go across now to the chairman of Maruti Suzuki, Mr. R.C. Bhargav. Mr. Bhargav, we don't know which way the court will decide because the order is still awaited. But wouldn't you agree that the polluter pays principle should apply?
You know, the polluter pays in principle, Shireen, should apply to all segments of the economy. The cars, as the study done by the IIT Kanpur shows that cars alone contribute just about 2% of the pollution which is caused in Delhi in terms of PM 2.5. Now, certainly, if you follow the principle of polluter pays, what about the other 98% also paying for the pollution they cause? I mean, you can't have one principle for 2% and some very different principle for the other 98%.
But Mr. Bhargav, as I said, I don't want to preempt or prejudge what the court is going to say or what the court will decide. But it seems that this is going to be a territory that will continue to be mired with uncertainty and controversy. Given that, will the automakers not take a stand that, yes, you can argue about the quantum, but diesel is seen as being more polluting than petrol? And so what can the auto companies do to mitigate the risk of diesel polluting our environment, irrespective of what the court or the government decide to do?
Government has mandated and industry has accepted that we will move to Euro 6 by 2020. Euro 6, once implemented, will ensure that diesel cars are as clean as petrol cars. The reason why Euro 6 did not come earlier in this country was partly at least because we just do not have the fuel required to implement Euro 6 standards. The oil companies, the refineries, the state-run refineries particularly, had not invested in making the fuel required for Euro 6. So to say that car companies are polluting in that sense has to be judged in the context of the availability of fuel for this purpose. The also.
Yes, sir, go ahead. Mr. Bhargav, can you hear us?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Go ahead, sir.
Hello. Hello.
So, Mr. Bhargav, Yeah, I think we're on a faulty line, but let me end by asking you, what has been the impact of the diesel ban so far? And if the ban were to continue, would it force car manufacturers now to look at alternate plans? And what is the cost of looking at alternate plans? I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about changes to the engine. We're not really talking about changes as far as the assembly line, etc. are concerned. That's my understanding. What would the cost implications be for the industry if the ban were to continue?
No, it's not only. See, already we have seen that because of the ban, companies like Toyota and Mercedes-Benz have lost a lot of sale in this area. But it has affected the smaller diesel cars also, whose sale is coming down. What I think people forget is that the only pollutant is not PM 2.5. We are also talking of CO2 in the context of global warming. And diesel cars are much lower in terms of CO2 than petrol cars or even CNG. And therefore, if in the longer term we have to meet the standard, bring down CO2, get the global warming targets of reducing CO2 emission met, there is at the moment, there's no real alternative available except diesel cars. So those who are advocating that diesel cars are dirty and should be banned are not looking at the overall picture of even the environmental requirements because CO2. Secondly, I think we have also to take into account, Sheen, the fact that this car industry as a whole cannot switch to all petrol cars and just forget diesel cars for this reason of pollution. And also the fact that the investments required for that will just not be possible in the short term. What does the industry do? And manufacturing industry is dependent on the automobile industry for its growth to a very large extent. If we are going to create jobs, if we're going to get manufacturing going in this country, meet the targets of 25% GDP by 2022, then it cannot be done without growing the automobile industry.
All right, Mr. Bhargav, we will have to wait to see which way the court decides to move on this and, of course, what the response will be from the government. But appreciate you, as always, joining us here on CNBC TV 18.